Hey, my beautiful ass, special ass, magical ass goddesses. Gotta excuse my throat. I can't do the high note today. But your girl is finally back with part 2 of my abusive relationship and how it helped me heal, which is where everything's gonna start to get real interesting. But before I get started, make sure you're subscribed to my channel. Also, make sure you hit the bell notification. That way, every time I drop a video, you'll be the first to know. Also, make sure you give the thumbs up the video. It will help me a lot in the algorithm. So, okay, let's just get into it, right? Okay, so I left off at when I had my son, right? And so, like I was saying before, when I had my son, like for the most part, when I was pregnant with him, I spent a majority of that time by myself. Like me and his dad, we weren't really communicating. You know, I was just kind of doing everything on my own, right? And so eventually I had to break down and call him because I was just fat as fuck and there was a lot of things that I couldn't do, and I was in the process of trying to move and just do a whole bunch of other stuff. So I ended up needing his help, and we kind of ended up getting on good terms. As you know, narcissists will usually do the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde type of personalities where they can be really sweet and loving one minute and then the next minute they turn into a fucking mess. So we was in the good stage at that Dr. Jekyll point. Ooh, excuse me. So he was at the hospital when my son was born, and everything was good after I had my son for like a good fucking 30 days. Literally 30 fucking days. I don't even think it was that long, but it just kind of, turned into something totally different, right? And a part of me was really naive and hoping that, there would be some other side of him that I would be able to see that was more responsible and caring and, all this other stuff. And it was just like, bitch, that was not reality. So after I had my son, after like 2 weeks of my son being home from the hospital, eventually he was just like, we should move in together. It's easier. I can get up with him at night and all this other stuff. And, I will give him credit. Like when my son was first born, like he was immaculate at that. Like, my son would wake up and this little fucker would wake up until like he was 8 months. Cause he likes to eat and still does. I should have known then what I was in for, but my son would wake up like 2 or 3 times a night to be fed, and like no problem. He would just get up and take care of it. He did do at least that much, but that was about it. And that was very short-lived. We ended up moving in together, and that was just a terrible idea. But I did learn at this point, if we gonna move in together, you're gonna move into my shit. I'm not gonna move into yours. And you're not gonna put your name on my lease either. Because when I want you gone, you're gonna get the fuck out. So I knew that much at least, right? Because now I'm in mommy mode. I'm like, I got a little son to protect. And over my dead fucking body, will he learn to treat women the way you have treated me? So I'm at least mindful of this much during this point, right? So he moves in, and within a couple of weeks, shit goes left. This is where shit starts to get real interesting. So I remember we get into this one argument, and I don't even remember how the argument started, but I remember during the course of that argument, we were in my kitchen, and my kitchen was kind of set up weird. It was just like the sink by a window, there was a back door, there was a stove right next to the back door with a little bit of counter space, the refrigerator, and then a longer countertop. So you just had this little narrow area in the kitchen to be in by the door. And so we're arguing about something, and he's like all in my face, like, come on, Chicago, let me see what you got. Come on, Chicago, you so bad. Come on, Chicago. And I just remember being so fucking irritated because like I don't even remember what the argument was over. So that clearly tells you it couldn't have been that fucking serious. And and he was just poking at me. Like when we would argue, I wouldn't even call it us arguing. I would call it him just talking for hours. Okay? Like when I say hours, I'm not even playing. He would literally, like if I'm in the living room watching a movie, he would come in there and just, start up some shit about a whole bunch of nothing and would sit there and talk about it for 2 or 3 hours straight. Well, I ain't said nothing other than, yeah, okay, I ain't paying him no fucking attention. And he knows this, but he's still running his fucking mouth. Like he would do that to me all the time. And at this point, I was just over it. Like, I need you to shut the fuck up and go away. And so as he's like egging me on, I'm just like, all right. So I ended up grabbing him by the hair and just like slinging him away from me. And he moved like towards the countertop and knocked the countertop off track. And I think that caught him off guard a little bit. I don't think he was expecting me to stand up for myself or defend for myself or anything like that. And so he stopped trying to like engage me to be physical with him because he realized that I would fight back, which is, I don't think, something that he realized before, and he had never tested me in that way. Especially now since we were moving together and my son was here. I think he just thought I was going to lay down and take that shit. And I was like, bro, not today, Satan. So yeah, so we end up, I end up pushing him into the countertop, and he moves over, in which, you know, it was such a blessing in disguise, and I'm so glad I'm not that person that I used to be. Because now that definitely would not be my response. But knowing now what I know from social work, he could have easily, being the narcissist that he was, turned that situation work in his favor and called the police and be like, look, she assaulted me, and got his, you know, child protective services involved. Like he could have done that and done the most, but that just shows, you know, how lazy he really was about this whole situation. And it's like, her go to jail and then I have to take care of my son full time. No. So after the altercation, I called the police because I'm like, you gotta go. And at this point, he's already moved out of his apartment. So it's like, you know, where's he gonna go? And I'm like, that's not my fucking problem. So I called the police. The police come in and they're talking to us, right? And they're, you know, they're supposed to like split you up, and they split us up, but we're both standing in the same room, like not even 3 feet away from each other, having our conversations with the police officer, right? Now, remember in part 1, when I told you when I first met him, I noticed all the gray hairs in his head, and I was like, you look a little too old for me, right? So I'm kind of eavesdropping on the conversation that he's having with the police officer, right? And so the police officer asked him for his date of birth. And at first he says something like, whatever his birthday was, 12/31/76. And he's like, no, 12/31/66. So I'm thinking to myself, how the fuck you don't know your birthday? Like, I can see, like, sometimes I'll confuse me and my son's birthday because my birthday is October 11th and his birthday is October 2nd. So, you know, sometimes October just flies out of my mouth and I'm not really paying attention to the dates and stuff like that. So I could get it if it were a case like that. But bro, how you don't know your own birthday? So I'm over here, the wheels are turning, and I'm thinking to myself, like, something's just not fucking right. So either way, the police make him leave because I'm like, he ain't on the lease, and, you know, yeah, all this other stuff. But they're like, okay, well, we'll basically do is split you guys up for like 48 hours, I think was the thing. So I told him, I'm like, I don't care where you go, but during this time you gone, find somewhere to go, because I'm still not going to let you come back in here. So he stayed gone for like a whole day, and then came back trying to apologize and all this other stuff. And, you know, at that point I was just like, no, it's done. It's a wrap. So lucky for him, he was actually able to move back into the old place that he was in before he moved in with me. So I was like, that's perfect. Go on about your business. And after he moved out, I really took that time to just kind of like reflect, like, never in a million years that I think I would end up a single mother in what I didn't know at the time was an abusive relationship. So I'm just like reflecting, like, how the fuck did I get here? Like, I'm stressed out at this point because now I'm trying to take care of my newborn son. I'm trying to finish school. I'm working 2 jobs. Like, I am just stressed the fuck out. So I'm just like, all right, let's do a life review and figure out how I got to this point. And after doing some life reflection, I realized, like, the only reason I got into that relationship was all the things I had been through literally right before getting into that relationship, and also realizing I had codependency issues. So at that point in time, I'm just like, all right, maybe it's kind of time to chill on the dating scene. And that maybe lasted for like a whole 3 months, 6 months, something like that, whatever. But, you know, the idea and the realization was kind of starting to click in my head for me. So yeah, he moved back out, and, you know, co-parenting was 0 to none, you know. We would do things, you know, like make plans. Like, you know, if I had to work, I'm like, okay, I need you to pick him up from daycare, and then I'll come pick him up from your house when I get off of work. And then I would do or say something that he didn't like, and then all of a sudden, I'm not picking him up, you figure it out. So I was like, okay, fine. You want to play that game, fine. So eventually I ended up putting him on child support, to which that also thoroughly pissed him off. And I'm just like, whatever, I don't give a fuck. At this point, he's no longer living with me. We're barely co-parenting, because after a while, when I realized that he really wasn't interested in co-parenting, I just stopped communicating with him. Because at the end of the day, all you're trying to do is create a disturbance within me that's then going to create a disturbance within my household with my child. And I'm not going for that shit. So at that point, it was just just stay over there and do your thing, right? So he really didn't like that. And anybody that's been in an abusive relationship knows that that's the one thing that a narcissist hates the most, is to feel like they are losing power and control over people and situations. So this is when he really starts to lose his shit. Like stalking me on a regular basis. I mean, a regular basis. Like I could tell you guys story for days of all the times that I caught him, or he basically told on himself so I could catch him stalking me. But one story in particular, I had some people that, I was getting to know over my house. One was a guy that stayed across the street from me. He was just cool as fuck. He was also from Chicago, so we kind of clicked on that. There was a guy that I worked with. He was from Chicago. And then there was a girl that I worked with. So, we all chilling at my house one night and we're playing beer pong. Which, being a girl from Chicago, I had no idea what the fuck beer pong was or any of this stuff. So, I'm learning new country games or whatever. So we're in my crib playing beer pong. We're having a good ass fucking time, smoking, drinking, just chilling. My son sleep in another room, ain't woke up, nothing. All of a sudden, my phone starts blowing up, y'all. I mean, blowing up. Back to back to back to back to back to back calls. And I see it's him. So I'm like, what does he want? I'm not really paying the phone no attention. I set it to the side. Maybe after about 10, 15 minutes, something telling me to go pick it back up. So I go pick it back up and I look and I got all these voicemails. So I'm checking my voicemails, and on my voicemails, I'm going, tell them niggas to come outside. Tell them niggas to come outside. Who the fuck in your house? Who you got around my baby? Blah, 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 blah. At this point, I'm just like, why? Why, sir? Why? I don't understand. What are you, like, why? So, he trying to make a scene about it, and I'm like, telling them, what's going on, and they're kind of like, I don't want no parts of this shit, and I don't even really blame them for that. So I call the police, right? And I'm like, I can't let the police come to my crib because we've been smoking weed in my crib. So I go outside to meet the police officer. I'm explaining to the police officer what's going on. Shout outs to Officer Kim Cordery of the Springfield Police Department. Out of all the officers that I had to deal with in my issues with him, she was literally the only helpful one. Thank God for her. But anyway, and I got to thank her for that later too, which hopefully I don't get to forget to mention. But yeah, as I'm standing outside talking with her, he's calling my phone. So I'm like, look, it's him. She's like, pick up the phone. And she tells me to answer it, and then immediately grabs it from me. And she's like, this is Kim of Springfield Police Department. This nigga hangs up with the quickness. So, she's basically just, telling me what to do, basically, proper protocol to follow. So I'm like, okay, bet. So I go back in the house, and, by this point, it's a mood killer. It's a vibe killer. So everybody kind of like, I think I'm going to take off now. So I'm like, okay, it's cool, whatever. So, I'm still dealing with issues of him stalking me left and right. It got so bad to one point, the guy that stayed across the street from me, he's just kind of like, yeah, like, he be stalking you all the time. Because he used to just sit out on his porch and people watch, Chicago shit. Sit out on his porch and people watch and smoke and, so he's seeing everything that's going on. He like, yeah, dude's stalking you heavy, like heavy. So by this point, after that last incident, I'm like, all right, it's time to get a restraining order. Go to court, get the restraining order, boom, done. He didn't give a fuck about that. He still kept stalking me. So by this point, I'm highly irritated. So I'm like, I don't even know what to do at this point because this piece of paper ain't helping. So funny how the universe works. At this point, told you I stayed in the house that was that was broken down into apartments, and that house got bought by a new owner, and he was really really sweet. And so my son was getting bigger at this time. He was probably about 2 or so, and so the apartment that I had, it didn't have a bathtub. I still had to give him baths in like this like little bathtub that I ended up having to buy. And so it was just like a whole thing to fill it up with water and all this other stuff. Like, it was kind of a pain in the butt, but it was what I could afford at the time, seeing as how his dad was not being really helpful, and it was seriously impacting my ability to make money. And so, my landlord comes over one day to collect rent, and he's like, hey, if you just want to move in the other apartment complex that we got, and I'll charge you the same price there that you pay here for rent. And I'm like, word. And it was a lot better. Like, a lot better. I was like, won't he do it? Won't he do it? Not only was I happy that it gave me a more suitable place to raise Isaiah, I was also happy at the fact that this was my time to get fucking little. Like, I was about to get little on this man. Do you understand me? I did not want him to know where I live. So I was like, this is a perfect opportunity. When I tell you, I picked a day, and one of my friends helped me move. I picked a day that I knew he was going to be at work. He ain't had the time to stalk me. None of that. I was like, yes, bitch. Got little on his ass. Moved the whole nine. Come to find out, that did not last too long. Why didn't it last too long? Because of the fucking state of Illinois, that's why. So, fast forward a little bit. At one point, I ended up having my niece live with me for a little bit. I'm sorry, y'all, my throat is really dry. I've been kind of recording all day, so. But yeah, so at one point in time, I had my little niece living with me. And one day she comes to me and she's like, I can hear footsteps outside my window. And I'm thinking she tripping. So I go and I look, and I don't really see anything. I go back in my bedroom, and then I hear him outside my bedroom. So I'm like, what the fuck? Eventually I realized he found out where I lived. How did he find out where I live? Because of child support enforcement. For some dumbass reason, child support enforcement has it to where anytime that they send the person that is on child support notification, they give the residential address of where the child is residing. He did not have that new address. And unfortunately for me, I didn't know that I would have to send them proof of my order of protection, so they would stop fucking sending him my address. The fact that I even have to do that is ridiculous. Clearly, if somebody is taking care of their child, they'll know the residential address they're at, right? Right, whatever. So he ended up finding out where I lived from that. So I'm just like, fuck. But it still did kind of work out in my favor as well, because where he was stalking me was really far away from where he lived compared to my prior house. So it was a little difficult for him to get to me at the time because he did not have a vehicle, which, like I said, worked in my favor. So, there was some stalking, but it wasn't like where I was previously staying, where it was constantly and all the time. And also around this time, not too long after I moved into that new apartment, I also ended up getting a job where I worked in advocacy. I had a friend who I had gone to school with and worked with, and she was just like begging me to take this job. And at first I was just like, I don't really know if I want to do that. And then I got tired of bartending and serving tables. So I was like, I'll go for it. And eventually ended up getting a job. So as I get into this job in Illinois, whenever you work in domestic violence, actually, I think this is most states now, but whenever you work in domestic violence, you have to be 40-hour trained, whether you're working or volunteering. If you're in the field, you have to be 40-hour trained. And so as I'm going through training, they're pointing out the signs of abusive relationships and just, all this information so that you understand how to help your clients, right? And they were training videos. And as I'm sitting and watching these training videos, I'm like, wow, this motherfucker did that. He did that. He did that too. Oh, it's like clicking now. The wheels are turning. Like, this man ain't crazy. He knew exactly what he was doing the whole damn time. So now I'm like, bet. Now, at this time, when I got hired on, well, not at this time, it was a position I kept the whole time, but I got hired on as a legal advocate. I was now the one assisting people who needed to file for orders of protections. The irony, right? So No, I can't make this shit up. So literally, as I'm still training for the job, and I believe my training was like a month, because I mean, it was a lot to learn. Even just learning how to fill out the paperwork for an order of protection was like a month process. Excuse me, because there are all these different remedies that you have to know, what situation, like it was a fucking lot. But, I was taking it in stride. Like, I was eager to learn. Like, as soon as I started it, like, I knew, like, I could feel it was something that I was being called to do, right? So, when I worked in this position, I was just kind of all over the place. Some days I was at the courthouse. Some days I was in her office. Some days I might be meeting with another client in a different organization. Like, social workers know very seldomly do you get to stay in one place and do your job. So this particular week, I want to say it was like the fucking second or third week I started the damn job. I'm at the courthouse with my friend who got me the job, and I'm training with her on, filling out these order protection paperwork. And there was one particular courtroom that we did the order protection hearings in. And right to the side of that courtroom, there was just like a little room where we would talk with the victims and fill out paperwork and stuff. And so I walk into the room with my trainer, and first I heard him. I could hear this voice, and I'm just like, the fuck? I hear him talking in the hallway. And so when I look out the door, there were like these benches, and you can't really see because there's a wall, not unless like somebody leans forward or something, but you can't really see who's sitting there. So I hear his voice, and then I know it's him because he's talking to somebody, giving them bullshit excuse reasons about, why don't let him see his son and all this other stuff. So I'm like, this motherfucker is really here. Like, why are you here? Really stalked me to the courthouse. Like, really, what was the point in that? Because I did not want him to find out where I work, because last he knew was my serving and bartending job, to which he would also stalk me there. So I didn't want him to know that I was working there. And because he's an absolute idiot, you would think, you could tell by the way that I was dressed, I guess you could have thought I was filling out paperwork with the young lady in the room. But I mean, you wouldn't have an inkling that like I'm there working. He was too dumb to figure that out. So luckily he didn't figure that out. I'm sitting in the room with her, and we're actually in there with the victim. So I'm trying to focus on the victim, but I'm also trying to focus on what the fuck he's saying. And, I just hear him in there talking shit, giving excuses like most narcissists do. Nothing is ever my fault. Feel sorry for me, blah, blah, blah. And then I realize he's, with a girl. So I'm like, all right, why are you really here? I'm like, this motherfucker better not be coming to file order of protection against me, because he gonna get his feelings hurt today. Hurt, bitch, no, you got to go through me first, and I'm not helping you. So good luck with that. So come to find out, maybe about 10 minutes of him sitting out in the hallway, he finally goes in the courtroom. I'm working with the victim at this point. I kind of forget about it for a whole little minute. Then all of a sudden he comes out of the courtroom, and he is heated, y'all. I mean, he's fucking heated, right? Now, at this point in time, because, the courthouse just had a certain schedule. So I know at this point in time, they're doing family cases. It's still not clicking to my dumb ass though, right? So, he comes out of the courtroom, and he's all pissed, and I'm like, what is that about? Now, some of our family judges also did order protection cases. Not all of them, but some of them. The judge that happened to be on the bench that day not only had my family case, but I worked with her in order protection court. So at this point, when I hear him coming out of the courtroom all pissed and mad, I'm like, what is that about? Now, this is like 5 or 6 hours before order protection court even starts. This is at like 9 o'clock in the morning, and order protection court didn't start. I'm sorry, it was like 4 hours. Order protection court started at 1, I believe. 1:30, something like that. And so when order protection court is over with, I'm thinking about asking her about what it is, but I'm just like, all these damn cases she ain't gonna remember. I'll get something in the mail about it eventually. And of course, I finally do get something in the mail. I get a notice of hearing to appear at a court hearing, and it is my last chance to appear. And I'm just like, motherfucker, I didn't get the first notice to appear, but whatever. So I get to court, and how awkward is it to be standing in front of the judge that you work with on a daily basis doing order of protections, explaining to her about a family case. Now, this was the thing. Whenever he would file something in the family case, he was, try to file for visitation so that we would have to have face-to-face contact, to which a whole bunch of stuff happened there. Like, y'all, I just got stories for days. But he would go and file in the family case and ask for more time for visitation, just to make me feel some type of way, to take up my time, my energy, because, that's what narcissists are, energy vampires. And so I knew his pattern at that point. Not only that, but like I told you guys before, I'm a lot smarter than he is. So, and not only that, but now me working in the court, I understand what constitutes as evidence, what does not. Like, a bitch is on her shit. I'm here, he's here, and he don't even know that shit. So, of course, when I get to court, he don't show up, because that's what he would do. Like, he would know I would have evidence against him, because he would be stupid and admit different things on text messages, to which I would then save and present as evidence. So, plus his initial reason for the filings were false anyway. So, of course, I showed up to court that day in front of the judge that I work with. I'm like, hey, it's me. And she's like, what are you doing here? So I started explaining to her the situation about how he was basically just using visitation to play around. And I have all of the text messages. I literally just pull up the text messages on my phone. I'm just like, here, just go through it. Have a field day. So she's looking through all the messages, and she's seeing all the little games that he's playing. And not to mention, the reason that I got the notice saying that I had to appear in court was because he was filing for notice of hearing, he was filing motions in court, but not sending me a notice of hearing to be in court. And most judges did not know this, because he had done it multiple times. This is actually something a lot of abusers do in court, and most judges just aren't fucking paying attention. So he would get all of these filings, or file all of these things, and get these rulings in his favor, because he wasn't even sending me notice to be in court, and that something was going on. So I'm explaining all of this to the judge, and she's like, enough said. I think, I did have a little bit of rank with her, since we were working together, although she was not a good judge, because she would say things to my clients in court like, he only hit you once, so I'm not going to grant your order of protection. But I'm favored and highly protected. So she saw the fuckery on the text message, and she was like, tell you what. Excuse me, building up to the climax. But yes, she saw all of that, and she's like, I'm going to, what did she do? She dismissed it with prejudice. That's legal jargon. So let me explain to you with prejudice and without prejudice. So let's say I file an order of protection against someone, and I come to court and I try to prove my case, and the judge throws it out without prejudice. That is the court saying that they see no reason that if something else happens in this case to where you can't file, and that they don't see that you don't have reasonable justification to, right? If a judge throws something out with prejudice, it is saying that the judge sees fault with the party who filed. That the judge knows that there is something wrong here, that the judge believes that the person could possibly be misusing filings in the court system. So she threw that out with prejudice, which automatically meant anytime that he went back to file anything in that case, a judge is going to see that and I'm going to be looking a little iffy at you. Now, at the time, I didn't understand this, because I had literally just been working in the field a couple months. So, I ended up working 6.5 years. So when I tell you a bitch's understanding of how all this shit works is top tier, like, try me if you want. You will never win. Like, I learned a particular set of skills. Like, he ain't got a chance in hell, okay? So she dismissed it with prejudice, and that kind of kept him at bay for a little bit. And I was just kind of, doing me. He wasn't really stalking like that. I was chilling, doing some self-reflection. Really, I was just like really, because I had been through all of this. Like, I was just so invested in helping my clients. And in a way, that was a good and a bad thing. I did get a lot of gratification from that job, because I've always known that I like to help people. Even before I started in social work, like when I first got into college, I wanted to major in nursing. I've always known, always known, I just love to help people. So being in that field, understanding their experiences, understanding their experiences to a T. Like, I would have people that would come in to file these orders, and they would start telling me a story about what happened. I'm like, oh yeah, and then they did this and this and this and this and this. And they're like, how do you know? And I'm like, girl, I don't do this job for pay. Don't do it for pay because I don't get enough pay. But yeah, like it just kind of became like a sixth sense to me. Like, I see abusive people. So, you know, I got a lot of fulfillment from working in the field. But then things kind of started to take a turn where things had died down with him. And because now I was working in domestic violence, I saw the whole situation for what it was. And that's the thing. Like, it's crazy because too, a lot of people would be really, 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 really shocked to know how many people I worked with in the field that had their own unresolved trauma. There were so many women that I worked with that were still in abusive relationships themselves, trying to counsel other people how to get out of them. How the fuck does that work? But yeah, other people that were still in abusive relationships and marriages, family dynamics. I mean, just like, and I am like, and this is also probably about 3 years into working in social services, was about the time that I started my spiritual awakening too. No, it was 4 years. 4 years in, I started my spiritual awakening too. So then this is just compiling, like, my eyes were open to so much, to the point where I was completely overwhelmed. I'm seeing all these unhealed people trying to help other people heal. And I'm just like, this don't make no sense. It don't make no sense. Then I'm noticing the court system in general and how it's not helping anybody. I mean, not helping anybody. And the point of culmination where I just really kind of just started to, in a sense, check out and focus more on my own healing. Funny how things happen, right? So this was around the time when Donald Trump was elected, which was what, 2017? And so this was also around the time that Solange had dropped her Seat at the Table album, and the song Cranes in the Sky came out, right? Y'all, the first time I heard that song, it was like, psh, reality check. She says in the song, I tried to work it away, and that just made me even sadder. And I was like, bitch, she talking about you. But she was, though. I realized that basically what I was doing, even though I was working on healing and resolving my own trauma from within, I realized that I was trying to project the healing that I wanted for myself onto others. And not everybody was ready to accept that for themselves, right? So what ended up happening was me completely and utterly overstressing myself out and burying myself and trying to help others. And that shit turned out so tragic. Like, I literally ended up making myself sick. I ended up having liver and gallbladder failure. I'll save that story for another day too. I'm telling y'all, this shit would be like 5 hours long if I had to explain to you like everything that I have been through. So yeah. At this point, I'm realizing that, you know, I'm trying to play Captain Save-A-Ho, and, you know, it's like J. Cole, don't save her. She don't want to be saved. Not to disrespect any domestic violence victims, because that's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that some people are not ready to heal from their trauma bonds. And that was a lesson that I had to learn the hard way. There were so many of my clients that just were not ready, and they were not ready for different reasons. They didn't have the proper resources. They didn't have the proper knowledge. They didn't have the proper support system. Like, there are lots of reasons why a lot of people aren't ready to move away from those toxic situations. But I was just realizing that I could not spend all of my time wanting things for others that they did not want for themselves, that they weren't ready for themselves, that they didn't trust that they were capable of within themselves. And that was just kind of a huge awakening to me, like, fuck. And I realized too, because part of the frustration came from realizing that the system was never really meant to help victims. And I'm probably going to make a whole nother separate video about that. on a at a different time, because there was just so much that I was seeing on a firsthand level. I was like, this is some absolute bullshit. It was never meant to help anybody. So all of these components are just kind of piling on, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, now I'm in a space where I'm just kind of like, okay, I don't understand why I'm even knowing all of this. So something told me, this is me starting my spiritual awakening, and something is telling me, like, use what you know. So I'm like, okay. So because of what I know from the course now, I start looking up information on my son's father. And this is when everything starts to change. Like, I already knew I had an upper hand on him when it came to him in the court filings. And at this point in time, he's not filing anything in court anyway, because of that, that with prejudice adding to the prior ruling. So I'm like, whatever. But there's still something, kind of niggling at me. And so because of what I learned in court and working in domestic violence, I learned a lot about how to search backgrounds, especially criminal backgrounds, and just civil records in general, right? And when I say civil records, I am referring to things like divorce cases, family cases, small claims cases, shit like that, order protection cases, stuff like that, probate cases. And so, my spidey senses just start going off. And I don't remember how this started, but eventually I ended up realizing that everything my son's father told me about himself was a complete lie. And when I say everything, I mean everything. How old he was, where he was from, how many kids he had, how many times he had been married. Everything. And something just clicked. Like, I had known this entire time that a lot of this was probably a farce. Excuse me, y'all. But yeah, like, it was just like finally being able to see the clouds from outside of the darkness. Like, everything just started to make sense. Like, it wasn't me. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't the irrational one. Like, none of it was me. And on some ways, I already knew that, especially when I started picking up on the early or the easier signs. Well, not necessarily easier for me to pick up on things like gaslighting, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, love bombing. Like, because I am an empath, I can tell when people are being insincere. And so those things were very easy for me to pick up on. But some of the other manipulation tactics that abusers use, like, I was just completely lost to that. And so finally being able to start to put together the pieces of the puzzle and realize, like, it's not me. I'm not crazy. But then also, how did I get in this in the first place? Because the whole time we were together, there were the red flags. Like, there were things that I knew weren't quite right about the relationship, but I stayed anyway, because, you start to internalize it and think it's you. And if you do something different, that things go back to the way that they once were. And so once I realized that it wasn't a me thing, I was like, okay, how do I move forward knowing everything that I know now? And one of the biggest things was knowing that it wasn't me, but then knowing that I have the power to allow what I accept and what I don't. Because when I tell you, this man still tries to this day to get underneath my skin. And I'm so fucking unbothered. Like, so unbothered. Y'all, I done moved to a whole new state, and this man don't know shit, okay? Knows nothing. He don't have my telephone number. He don't have my address. Last time he tried looking up people connected to me on social media, to which I don't even really use, so he didn't have too much luck with that. Like, just... he still tries, but because I'm on a higher vibration and a higher frequency, and I can see things from a whole nother level and perspective, and understand that I don't have to allow him to make his demons my demons. Sir, everybody got their own shit to deal with, but you're going to keep your shit over there. Don't bring it over here. That's that boundary. You cut off. Like, cut all the way off. He has no access to me whatsoever. That was the key to my healing. Me removing myself from the situation, allowing myself to get out of that stress. Because when I tell you, even just the stalking alone, the anxiety that I got from him stalking me alone, it was ridiculous. I mean, anytime I had to step foot out of the house, like my heart was just on 1,000, just out of fear of running into him. And after a while, that did subside, only because I ended up buying a different car, and that car had tinted windows on it. So even if I rolled past him, he wouldn't fucking know that anyway. Because your girl be thinking, always got to stay one step ahead. But yeah, it just kind of came to that realization of like, I have the power over how all of this goes. And I know for me, it's a lot different than for a lot of other women, because I'm not forced to co-parent with him. And I know that a lot of other women don't necessarily have that luxury and have to interact with their abusers. But one thing that you need to know is that you set the tone for everything, love. Once you let them know that they have no control over what you do, who you are, where you go, what you say, who you date, the people you keep in, like, they have no control over all of that. And the minute you realize that they don't have any control over all of that, and you enforce that, that's when things start to happen. Not for them, for you. Because that is another thing that I have to emphasize in the healing process. Stop looking for this external change. The change is not external. It is from within. It is all about changing how you allow other people to make you feel, and also allowing a change in how you view the things that happen and take place in your life. I viewed that relationship, it was a catalyst for a lot of lessons that I had to learn over and over again multiple times, because I really wasn't getting to the meat and potatoes of what the universe wanted me to learn from all of that. And the real thing that the universe wanted me to learn from all of that was to stop devaluing myself. I was mad about all of these toxic people that kept coming into my life, and they were coming into my life because I allowed it. I tolerated it. Even in little ways and forms, like, if there's a friend that I'm talking to and I realize that we aren't even on the same frequency, we don't vibe the same nothing, and yet here it is, I'm engaging with this pointless energetic exchange with you. Me being afraid to put up my boundaries, me freely giving myself to others who may not deserve it. When you heal and complete, healing, let me take that back. Healing is never complete. When you heal, you have the ability to understand that the way others treat you is not a reflection of you. When you heal, you have the ability to let go. You let go and you let God. Even to this day, if I had to co-parent with him, he could harass me all he wants, but it would never work in his favor for two reasons. A, because I know his game. I spent 6.5 years playing that game. And B, I'm not emotionally attached because I realize that when you're dealing with narcissists, their whole point is to get a reaction out of you, to be able to make you feel some type of way about yourself, about the situation, about whatever. He used to always tell me stuff like, oh, nobody's going to want a single mom and stuff like that. Bitch, I'm hot in these streets. Get your entire life together. Like, no, that was not the case at all. But when they catch you in that mental state, you tend to absorb that and really make it your narrative, even though it shouldn't be. But regardless of what he would have to say, if I had to sit down and have a face with him right now, like, I would be absolutely fucking bothered by none of it. Why? Because I see him for who he is. I realize that it is his own inner damage and inability to deal with his own childhood wounds that causes him to act the way he does towards me. Do I care about his issues? No. I will not absorb those problems. They're his problems. I'm going to leave them to him. If I have to communicate, fine. You want to get a rise out of me? You're saying something like, I know that you're just saying that to piss me off. And when I tell y'all, the one thing that you can do to piss off a narcissist the most is show them how fucking unbothered you are. What? When I used to do that, like, oh, he would get so heated and irritated. I mean, y'all, he would be hot. Like, I done said this, I done said this. Like, she just ain't responded to none of it. I don't understand. Like, bro, you don't affect me like that. Stop letting other people control how you feel and how you move. That is what healing looks like. Focusing on self, balancing self, centering self, becoming one with self. So that's my story time, y'all. There was so much to it that I left out just for the sake of trying to make this a decent time video, and it's still 45 minutes. So yeah, that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you're interested in any healing coaching services, you can email me at divinefemrising11. And until next video, my loves.